All right. Things have gotten super interesting after they were already pretty super interesting with the Texans free agency period. Remember the first day, everybody was distraught because there was no action whatsoever. The second day, there was a boatload of action. Joe Mixon, Danielle Hunter. Third day, little bit of a lull in some regards. The Malik Collins trade. We were trying to figure out exactly why, what, when, what exactly was the reason behind all that. So that was kind of curious. But we were taking it easy because everything else had been so good. And then today you get news that I can tell already has been deeply divisive amongst Texans fans. And I'm finding myself getting more and more excited about it. But if you haven't seen already, the Vikings and Texans agreed to terms on a major deal, according to Ian Rappaport, a major deal in advance of the draft, landing Minnesota another first round pick. Minnesota gets number 23 and number 232. Houston gets number 42, number 188, and a 2025 second rounder. So the meat of that there is that you get two second round picks this year, two second round picks next year. My first immediate thought was, okay, how's Nick going to get back up into the first round? Or does he get back up into the first round? And if so, when? I'm giving it a 50-50 right now that he does end up trading back up into the first round. But there is also this, and Robert Land brought this up. So we'll put a pin in the 50-50 moving back up to the first round. But Robert made a really good point. He said, when looking at the Caserio trade, keep this in mind. The Texans added $6 million in cap space based on projected salaries because from moving to 23 to 42, because you don't have to pay that first round salary to number 23. This allows the Texans to grab solid starting cornerback or safety on the open market that maybe they couldn't afford. Also in a deep draft for wide receiver and cornerback, maybe it's not awful to drop 19 spots and add a second next year. Look, there's a million different ways to think about this. And I think your first inclination a lot of times is to think, well, God, okay, whoever I had dead set, I want Johnny Newton at number 23. I love that kid, the defensive tackle out of Illinois. And in my mind, immediately, I'm like, well, you're not going to get him if you trade all the way back. We know that Caserio thinks about the draft in terms of bands of players. He talks about this with Sean Pendergast and I. We're going to have him on at 7:30 a.m. on Monday, by the way. So lots of questions for Nick Caserio on Monday morning on Sports Radio 610. But he thinks about bands of players. And right now, especially with the Malik Collins trade and how defensive tackle looks, they signed Tim Settle. They have bodies at defensive tackle, but I don't think they have the impact pass rushers other than when Danico Autry comes down in passing downs. So I wouldn't be surprised if what Caserio is thinking is, all right, we like the defensive tackles that are probably going to be available at the top half of the second round. And maybe we move up to get one of those, or we like a boatload of the wide receivers that are going to be available still in the second round. There's so many, and I'll go through the names with you in a minute. But I'm intrigued by this, and I'll take your questions too after we work through some of the initial parts of it. I'm first and foremost okay with this. I don't think the trade value was out of whack or anything. The Vikings, we've got the Vikings second round pick next year. I've spent a lot of time castigating the people who just assumed that the Texans pick in 2024 was obviously going to be the number one pick in the draft because obviously the Texans were going to be awful. And it was so stupid that they traded their pick to the Cardinals when obviously you're going to get Caleb Williams with that pick, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say like, well, the Vikings are probably going to either have a rookie quarterback or Sam Darnold, so they're going to suck. However, just playing the odds as they are, there is a good chance that the Vikings are going to be playing with a rookie quarterback or Sam Darnold. And it might not be that bad of a pick. Maybe it ends up being nothing at all. But they've got a second round pick with which to work to either maneuver up into high in the second round or all the way back up in the first round. So I'm cool with that. If you think about just some of the names in the draft, because whoever you've got your heart set on, with me, it was Johnny Newton. Somebody else maybe you're thinking that Byron Murphy was going to fall, or that maybe you're going to be able to go up and get Bowers at 15 if you trade it up. That's still in play if Nick gets back up there. But I think right now, between the added salary on the salary cap and the guys that'll be available, that might just work out to be just fine. Let me share. I couldn't get this to load properly earlier. Okay. Consensus big board. So there will be a little bit more ads space here than I wanted. I wanted to share a slide, but um, this is mock draft database, and they have like their consensus mock drafts where guys fall in the draft, and so as a general guide for getting a feel where guys are going to be, these are like generally accurate within windows and what have you, like never 100% obviously. But if you look at, okay, at 23, the Texans might have been out on Brian Thomas or certainly any of the top three guys there. But you get down between 23 and 32 in the draft, and you've got Mitchell, you've got Xavier Worthy, you've got Keon Coleman, you've got Ladd McConkey, you got Troy Franklin, Xavier Leggett, Roman Wilson. Like, these are all guys that I would be very intrigued and excited by. If you go up to the defensive tackles, likewise, not as many numbers, but I think if you think about, all right, maybe you miss out on Byron Murphy, maybe you miss out on Johnny Newton, but Braden Fisk, Devondre Sweat, Chris Jenkins, those three guys, there's a good chance that one of those guys is going to be available either at 42 or maybe a little bit higher. It's funny that Braden Fisk, right when the trade went down, I went here to look to see where he'd been mocked the most often, and it was right at number 42 to the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm for those two positions alone, I'm pretty optimistic that the Texans are going to find somebody that they like at that spot. Not to mention they have that second one. You go to cornerbacks. Let's look at, okay, Cooper DeJean was at 23. That was starting to be kind of a popular pick for a lot of people to the Texans. But Kool-Aid McKinstry, Rakestraw, Lassiter, quite a few like enticing guys. I'm not as sold on a cornerback. I think honestly, if you look at cornerbacks, in the cornerbacks who are available right now, oh, it's probably not going to load properly. You sons of bitches. All right, excuse my language, everybody. Excuse me while I go to the Athletic and bring up it. They've got a nice list of like the cornerbacks still available, and just to give you a feel for, I thought Steven Nelson played absolutely fine last year, especially in complement to Derek Stingley. If Derek Stingley is so don't look at that. As long as Derek Stingley's healthy, but that's obviously the big part of it, right? All right, let me get this out of here. Present. All right. Steven Nelson, Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White. You got Yaden, you got Howard, Xavier Howard, Trey Herndon still out there, Levi Wallace, C.J. Henderson, Adoree Jackson. If you're into Adoree Jackson, so I'm like that. Those are the cornerbacks. If you look at safeties, likewise, I know that obviously Simmons is the big name there, but you've got Kyle Duggar, Marcus May, Julian Blackman, Condre Diggs, Sean Gibson Sr. Sean Gibson Sr. would be an interesting one because he was here in Houston, but then also spent time with D'Amico in San Francisco. So there might be a little bit of a reunion there. I'm cool with that. I want to go to the comments because I haven't checked them yet. Want to get my initial thoughts out, but I'm guessing that at least 50% of you are dead set against this trade, and I'm wide open to your reasons for that. We're our YouTube stream just from the station as soon as this trade news came down popped like huge. I think we might have hurt the audio on it. Can't wait for day 2 at the sports book. Ethan Matt says the defensive tackle pool is really concentrated in the second round. Yeah. And I've got thoughts about Devondre Sweat also that I want to talk about. Let me write this down to be sure we get to it, because I know a lot of you Longhorns especially, but just like anybody who's in love with old school, menacing, terrify all the villagers, run-stuffing defensive lineman, Devondre Sweat's your guy. Is a throwback. Not thrilled about being out of the first round concurrently, but can't fully judge it till we see how the next 2 drafts go. Hope we can sign Simmons as well. I get you there, and maybe that ends up being kind of one of the luxury signings. He ain't going back up. Tons of talent in the second and third. Vikes aren't going to place higher than third in their own division. I guess, but you understand, right? Oh, why am I frozen? No, no. Okay. You understand why I'm scared of that, right? I've spent the last 3 months just absolutely destroying old frozen takes about how the Texans were going to be the worst team in the league and that pick was going to be number one. So I gotta be careful about this. I don't want to be personally responsible for all of a sudden Sam Darnold rising out of the mist and becoming an all-pro performer or something. No second or third for the Vikings. Vikings playing versus Packers, Lions, and Bears, who should all be improving next year. All right, I'll let you guys say it. Yeah, I was freaking out. Make a little bit more sense now. Vikings no longer have Danielle Hunter, Grenard, and Cashman a new play. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, it's been weird. It's kind of it's a weird symmetry right now between the Vikings and the Texans because like all of a sudden the Vikings are that team that's in the mode of having a young quarterback, and the Texans all of a sudden, despite having a second-year quarterback, are kind of in the mode of just like, all right, we're right on the brink. We just got to make a few moves, and we're up there in that echelon. So the Vikings go with Grenard, who's not as proven as Danielle Hunter, but has youth and hopefully upside. They bring in Blake Cashman, and the dicey what kind of move that was, other than that they're taking somebody that the Texans are saying goodbye to. Texans bring in Danielle Hunter and the Vikings second round pick, and are operating a lot more like a veteran team right now. And they also, the Texans have not been one of the very most aggressive teams in free agency. They're up there in the top 7 right now, but they're very front loaded. So when you talk about taking advantage of that rookie quarterback contract, the Danielle Hunter contract especially, but all of these contracts are 2 or 3 years, and the lucrative ones. And when it's time to pay CJ and some of these other young guys, it should hopefully all balance out pretty well. So they've front loaded this strategy right now. I like Leggett. Plus Leggett, remember Leggett's the kid with the Geechee accent, which is it Ghana Geechee? It's people from like the lowlands of South Carolina, the low country, and they've got just like a very distinctive. Jonathan Joseph taught me about this. Very distinctive way of talking, kind of just like very country, but sometimes kind of very fast, and they meld syllables, and it's intoxicating just listening to him speak. He'll make you want to go have a sarsaparilla out on the porch. Let's see, Franklin or Roman Wilson, Fisk and Sweat. Yeah. So as far as Devondre Sweat. Devondre Sweat and Fisk and Chris Jenkins seems to be kind of consensus right below those guys. The thing I worry about with Fisk, and maybe I'm biased, I thought LSU did a good job of keeping him kind of locked at the line of scrimmage. And Fisk made some good plays. Then I go watch Fisk versus some of the other, like I watched the Fisk versus Louisville. I watched Fisk versus Louisville, and I had to double check because I thought I was watching a highlight reel. It was like the first 5 plays, he made a play deep in the backfield. So he just destroyed them. The only other complete game I've watched of Fisk was LSU, and it was kind of night and day going up against those LSU offensive linemen. Like they made it really difficult for Fisk, but you can still see how explosive and fast and active with his hands he is. I just get a little bit nervous that he kind of got swallowed up by some of those bigger dudes. You could say the same thing about Will Anderson from last year. So, or from 2 years ago from his college tape. Some of the bigger dudes he got locked up against and looked kind of powerless at times. Some of that, I think, we saw with Will just from the experience of going after NFL caliber guys every single week. It ended up not being a big deal. And he very much overcame some of those problems. So Fisk has all the athleticism to do that. Devondre Sweat is not like the prototypical defensive lineman that maybe D'Amico usually talks about. I think him and Saleh and a lot of the other guys that have been in this type of system, they want super athletic dudes. Maybe these combo hybrid, they can stop the run, they can stop the pass, they can rush the passer, like 300-pound type guys. Whereas Devondre Sweat obviously is like he's 265 pounds and 365 pounds. He was like 345 reportedly a couple years ago, 2 years ago. I don't know if he has a hard time keeping the weight off, if it's or if it's just more like he could get away with it in college because he was plenty athletic enough. I would more worry about the athleticism, obviously, but then also just longevity over the course of a season when you're trying to play at 366 pounds. That's really hard to do. But like if you think about like Dexter Lawrence, I think of Dexter Lawrence, I think, okay, that's a guy that D'Amico would absolutely love because he's not a gargantuan dude, but he can stop the run, he can rush the passer. The one thing to remember is that a lot of teams that think, hey, we want nothing but athletes on our defensive line, we're just going to be super fast. Like almost inevitably, if the defensive coordinator and head coach last long enough, those teams end up saying like, all right, we need at least one big guy. Okay, we need a Booger McFarland type, or we need the Colts when they eventually got that nose tackle. I can't remember who he was, but that was like when the Colts went from being a team whose defense was only built to rush the passer after Payton had gotten them a lead. They got a couple of bigger dudes as defensive tackles so that when they had to stop the run, they could stop the run. And like T'Vondre Sweat is going to be just fine there. I think the other thing about T'Vondre Sweat that makes me overlook some of the size concerns is that I don't feel like I have to make any excuses for him. Like I'm watching him play against college kids and he's destroying these college kids. Like I like it when I get nervous when a guy's a great athlete, but he's not destroying college kids. Because like where do you go from there? Like you're already physically superior to these guys. What's going to happen if you're physically superior, if you're the same level of athleticism with some of the guys in the NFL? With T'Vondre Sweat, like he pretty much just disposes of people like used tissue papers, and it's pretty cool to see. And like I feel like his feet are quick enough to handle the zone running game and keeping in his gap with some of that stuff. And I haven't, I've watched like 3 complete games of him, so I'll try to watch some more to look some more of the flaws. But man, I really like him. Chris, that's true. I still remember Chris Jenkins Sr. bullied Chris Myers in the season opener years ago. Oh, was that like the first year? When was it? We'll have to get Chris Myers on. If the Texans take Chris Jenkins, we'll have to get Chris Myers on because Chris has a pretty good attitude about joking about stuff like that. Fadasaki, damn it. I'm going to mess his name up every damn time. Every time. You guys have to help me out and be sure that you spell it properly. So Fadakasi. Fadakasi, not Fadasaki. Fadakasi might punch above his weight class next year too at DT. Look, I think that Fadakasi is who he is. That I think he's a capable defensive tackle. He was a starter for the Jaguars. And I think that, I'm going to go back and watch some of his tape from the Jets because for whatever it's worth on Pro Football Focus, he graded out a little bit better with the Jets than he did with the Jaguars. So I'm intrigued to see if maybe, even though he wasn't a starter with the Jets, maybe that system fit him better. So yeah, that punching above his weight class or just maybe building on being better than or more than what he was in Jacksonville. There's a chance of that. I won't hold my breath on it, but I think there's a chance of that. Okay, here we go. Why won't they get CJ a weapon at wide receiver that can stay healthy? All 4 of our top receivers have injury issues. Everybody has grabbed a receiver. CJ needs more playmakers. Okay, I guess this is where I am with that. The teams that I see go out and like desperately need to go get a playmaker at wide receiver are these teams by and large where you feel like they're still trying to figure out what they have at quarterback. So, all right, we got to go get Jalen Hurts a weapon. We got to get Tua Tagovailoa a weapon. We got to get Will Levis a weapon. And meanwhile, on the Texans roster, I understand the injury concerns, but on the Texans roster, they already have 2 wide receivers who have very much been weapons and been very, very effective with CJ Stroud as their quarterback. And I have reason to think that that's going to get better. I think as far as going out and grabbing somebody, like trading for a T. Higgins or something like that, in a year where there's so many good wide receivers in the draft, I just don't see the logic in doing that. And I think really, like, I'm starting to get offended on behalf of CJ Stroud when I feel like people think he needs help or something. Like, you have a quarterback who can make a young wide receiver better. If you draft a wide receiver in the second round, you do have the quarterback. Like, CJ Stroud is better than Tua Tagovailoa. CJ Stroud as a passer is better than Jalen Hurts. We'll see after this next year, as far as in totality, what is Jalen Hurts, and perhaps with a better setup on offense. But as a passer, he's certainly better than Will Levis. And I just don't feel that urgency that you got to go out and you got to find another high-priced veteran when the team still needs, like as of right now, they don't have a starting cornerback opposite of Derek Stingley. I would be very, very cool with an upgraded safety, but they at least have starters there right now. And then I think you do need an upgrade for a 3-down defensive tackle. You can get by with who you have right now, but in terms of okay, are you championship caliber in that regard? I think they need at least one dude that's a bit of an upgrade, and maybe that comes in the draft as well. So I'm all for giving him more weapons. I just don't think it's an absolute necessity. He's better than that already. That's what I feel. But I'm not going to think that you were insulting CJ Stroud, obviously. All right, garbage trade. We were lucky to have a first pick in the first place. I don't know. Everybody gets a first round pick, so I don't know if you're lucky to have a first round pick. Like, it's like, there's not. Am I missing something there? Because there wasn't anything the Texans could have done to have lost that first round pick. So it wasn't luck that they had a first round pick. They very much by design kept that first round pick. So Vikings have Justin Jefferson. They can't be that bad, right? Well, for now, we'll see. Justin Jefferson. We should get that first round draft pick back. Yeah, okay. That's a question there too. 23rd pick to Vikings, Minnesota. 42 pick, 11 pick. Okay. Man, you guys are active on this. I want to watch the press conferences from yesterday though too. Let's see, definitely draft a wide receiver for the future. That's where I am. The Bengals got Chase, Higgins, and Boyd for Burrow. Easy to grab another this draft. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing. If you look at kind of the long history of some teams, I think when you have a good quarterback, okay, yeah, now I'm really, you know what? Now I'm really into this way. If you think about the Packers, even though Aaron Rodgers hated and despised it, the Packers did a really good job finding wide receivers in the second round and later. They didn't draft a skill position in the first round for over a decade. They just kept finding Jordy Nelsons and Devontae Adams and guys like that. And I don't think that's not a slam dunk when you don't have a really good quarterback. Like as tempting as it is to think that those guys would have just been awesome anywhere and everywhere. It helps having a really good quarterback. The Steelers as well. The Steelers just have found a boatload of, well, especially when Roethlisberger was there, wide receivers outside of the first round. So I'm not saying you should never take a receiver in the first round. Obviously, Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins were pretty damn good. I just think that right now, with the production that you got from Nico and Tank, you don't need to go all in on wide receiver in the first round when you could be taking care of other positions. That's the whole point of the 1 and 2 year signings, to avoid payroll when it comes to extending. So this is another conversation. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Frobius. I don't have a Frobius. I haven't seen you in forever. Were you banned from Twitter, Frobius? I know, Ethan. I know that's you, Ethan, but you're talking to Frobius. Frobius NS stands for North Shore. Teams aren't allowed to renegotiate. So that's 24 minutes on this trade. I'm going to switch to reacting to to Danielle Hunter's press conference, but I can keep coming back to this when it's relevant, because I know that's the hot topic right now. But I haven't really gotten a chance to listen to all of this. I've only listened to the clips of. Let me bring this over here. Let's see if my nephew's dog runs through the back of the window there at some point during this. All right, so this is Danielle Hunter, new Houston Texans defensive end. A guy that I was skeptical that I didn't know for sure what D'Amico would think about Danielle, because Like, he's not super, super stout versus the run. He does just fine. He makes a lot of tackles for a loss. But that's the one area I would say that John Grenard is better than Danielle Hunter is in just the being stout on the edge, like in the really more physical part of the run game. Danielle Hunter does make a lot of plays in the run game. So it's not like I'm worried about it or anything. Danielle Hunter is a pass rusher. And Danielle Hunter is a guy that plays like 90% of the snaps as opposed to like the 55 or 60% that you get out of Jonathan Grenard. Danielle Hunter's just been way more productive in almost every capacity. So he's 30 years old. That's the one downside potentially compared to Grenard, but Grenard's been injured too, and it's only on a 2-year contract. And Danielle Hunter's coming off of one of his best seasons. So whatever 30-year-old decline there might be, I feel really good about this. First question Danielle got was about playing for his hometown team, and coming full circle. What does it mean to you?
It's a lot. It's an honor to be able to come back and play in front of my family and all the people that I grew up with. I know they've been pretty excited about the news lately, and they'll be fun to be able to come to a game and see me play.
Yeah, that's fun until like all of a sudden, I don't know how many cousins Danielle has. Like, I don't know how deep they roll, but like the second and third cousins, or the second cousins twice removed, or the first cousins 3 times removed, it gets pricey. I know you're making $48 million guaranteed, plus another million in incentives, but it gets pricey. I'm just warning you. Next question was watching from afar what the Texans were able to accomplish this past season. What's your assessment of the football team and the success that they had last year? Okay.
I mean, it was a big part of it, I remember last year during the playoffs, I actually came to the game against the Browns, and I liked what I saw there. So, and just the home feeling and how the guys were on the field playing together for each other and the way they swarmed the ball on defense, that was a big part of it. So I'm excited about that.
That's one thing that really sticks out is just the way they swarm on defense. And I think as a defensive player, I watch that, like it jumps out of film at you immediately. And a lot of times it's guys that played the way D'Amico wants to. If you got a team that's predicated on, okay, we're going to have 4 guys rushing the passer, we don't want to have to blitz and do all that, then that means you're probably going to be playing a fair amount of zone, and you want guys to rally to the ball and just, what D'Amico calls it the kill zone. When if somebody hits instead of calling it the soft spot in the defense, it's a kill zone. So like, oh yeah, guys are going to complete a few passes there. You know what we're going to do? We're going to come up and tattoo their kidneys. And so Danielle, he's a very soft-spoken dude, but he probably likes tattooing kidneys himself. Next question. This isn't your first time indiscernible. What were some things that you were looking for wherever you went?
I mean, anything that has to be dealing with contracts, I'll leave that to my agent. But the biggest thing was just having a good amount of guarantees. You play the game of football, you got to make sure you're guaranteed a lot of things. So.
Yeah. Like the fully guaranteed contract, it was driving me insane for a few years because players would say, well, we want fully guaranteed contracts. And I would say this to like actual like player reps. Kirk Cousins has a fully guaranteed contract. Will you guys quit whining about this? Like all you have to do is negotiate like Kirk Cousins does. You take a shorter term contract, you get all of your guaranteed money, and then you're a free agent while you're still young. And that's exactly what Danielle Hunter is doing. That's what Laramie Tunsil has done. When he's done his extensions, he does them pretty short term because he knows that the salary cap keeps going up. And he knows that if he plays well, he's going to be rewarded for it. And he trusts in his ability. So kudos to you, Danielle Hunter and Laramie Tunsil, because people don't whine about the guaranteed contracts nearly as much anymore. Next question is, from a game standpoint, what were some of the things you were looking for?
Just being able to just go after the quarterback. And the Texans, they showed that they were able to do it. And that's been in my DNA since I came into the NFL. And I'm happy to be able to go out there and just play for my teammates and bring that to the table.
All right, next question.
Oh, man.
What are your impressions of defensive end Will Anderson Jr.?
That kid right there. I mean, he's exciting, has a lot of tools. And I was with him earlier. And he just can't stop jumping. How eager he is to just go out there and just rush the passer together. Very good kid. I'm excited to just be able to go out there and teach him a lot of things that I know and help him become a better player. And same, learn a lot from him also.
the one thing about Danielle Hunter that I think is going to be really good for Will Anderson is that Danielle Hunter is excellent at finishing the quarterback. So there are a lot of guys like Jadeveon Clowney is the prime example of a guy that could rush the passer really well, that would win a lot of pass rush downs. But those last two steps to the quarterback and getting the quarterback on the ground, it's eluded him his entire career. And part of it is he's a stiffer athlete for as athletic as he is. He's kind of stiff. Where Danielle Hunter, as he says later on in this interview, one of his old coaches used to call him Gumby, even though Danielle Hunter doesn't know who the hell Gumby is. But that was like the exact same comparison I made to Danielle Hunter this week earlier, was that he's like Gumby when he gets to the quarterback. Like he'll have one hand up in the air blocking the passing lane, like, and then the other hand down around like the legs of the quarterback, and somehow he uses like every little bit of his wingspan, and he's got a lot of really good bend at the end. So like Will Anderson is not stiff at all, but he's so hyper excitable that like you get that sack fever. And you remember early in the first half of the season, there were some sacks he missed where I think if he had settled down a little bit more, it's kind of like open field tackling. Like you can't be going in 99 miles per hour for those last couple steps. You kind of got to settle in and relax. I think that Danielle is incredible at that. And just almost by osmosis and watching and just, I think, talking and seeing Danielle, that's going to be helpful for Will Anderson too. Because that was one of the things Will got better at in the second half of the season, was just finishing the sack. Next question. What do you feel like your acquisition to the team, what do you think that you can do in terms of indiscernible?
I feel like the biggest thing about going into a football game is affecting the quarterback. And if you have a team that's able to affect the opposite team's quarterback, it gives you a better chance of winning the game. So, I like what I see here with the D-line, and I'm able to add my attributes and skills towards that and able to affect the other team's quarterback.
The only thing that I'm wondering about, and at some point, I don't know if Danico Autry is speaking today or not. He might be right now. I think Danico Autry, when he signed, was probably expecting to be a defensive end opposite of Will Anderson, because then the Texans were trying to trade Malik Collins for Eric Armstead, and that fell through, obviously, because the Texans saw that they had this chance at Danielle Hunter. So now you've got three really good quality defensive ends, but Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are going to be the marquee guys. So I don't know if, with Danico Autry, as long as he's cool with it and like hopefully it's no big deal. Sometimes the starting stats get a little touchy because a guy, okay, there might be a guy who's a starter, but or he's a starter on nickel, but he's not a starter in base, and vice versa. Is Danico Autry gonna get some more reps playing down a defensive tackle than you might think, just to get him out on the field as a starter? I don't know. There's going to be a really nice rotation with all of them. And I think there will be a lot of packages where Danico Autry is playing defensive tackle in passing situations or versus certain types of teams. But it's a good problem to have. It's kind of like, I don't want to be like the Astros when we used to be able to complain about the Astros having too many good starting pitchers. How are you going to work them all in? They'll figure it out. We got a nice starting rotation of defensive ends. So growing up, were you a Texans fan, or was there a player you looked up to?
Man, when I was younger, I grew up in Mario Williams, Coach Ryan's. I seen that era, and I've seen all the stuff that they went through. So I was a big fan of Mario Williams and what he was doing. And I try to model my game after that sometimes, but I realize, there's some things that he could do that are just not for me. So, but I grew up in that era, and I liked what I saw from that team.
Yeah, that's cool. Like Mario's just he's kind of a comic book character in terms of his size, and there's certain things from a size standpoint that Danielle's not going to be able to do. But then Danielle's a better pure athlete than Mario was. I think the one thing that strikes me as similar between those two is that they're both really good at, even if they didn't 100% win the battle versus the offensive lineman, their limbs are so long that they're able to reach in and poke the ball out of the quarterback's hands. And they've got it takes a lot of hand-eye coordination to do that too. Danielle does a really good job with that, as did Mario. Okay, so this question is, what do you like from head coach D'Amico Ryans?
I like that he understands the players. He understands players and having them being able to go out there and play for each other as a one unit. He brings in the family aspect of playing football. It's not an individual sport. You got to go out there and play for each other. So that's one of the biggest part about it. And he understands his players, what we need and what we want in order to be successful.
I think the part with D'Amico, like, and Joe Mixon gets to it too. Joe Mixon, it's interesting because he doesn't. It's really obvious that, man, the trade was not something that he expected, and I don't think he was very happy about it either. Like, he didn't want to leave Cincinnati, so I think the conversations that he had with D'Amico were much more important there. I think, look, D'Amico wasn't able to talk to Danielle before they threw $49 million at him. So I think D'Amico was inclined to be pretty cool with anything, but like D'Amico and wanting to create that atmosphere of almost like a more of a college type atmosphere. And I know, like, I know that Dalton Schultz got crap for saying the same thing in comparison to the Cowboys atmosphere, that it was much more of a college atmosphere with the Texans, but like, it's 100% true. I mean, it's 1,000% true. If you can create that and maintain it, that goes a long way. Sean and I talked about it this morning. The Ravens forever, for like 30 years, have been a team that's known as just being way tighter than your typical NFL team. Because in the NFL, you got huge age gaps. You got some guys that have families, some guys that don't. Guys are living further apart from each other. There's not like an athletic dorms or like a Greek system where a bunch of with a athletic house or anything. So you got to kind of work at it. And I could see between D'Amico, CJ, and Will, that's the kind of stuff they care about. And that jumps out to players. I remember as a player, I just hearing certain things about the Ravens or the Bills and just like how tight-knit they were. It was appealing. It was appealing to me. But so would $49 million, So this is... You mentioned going to a playoff game, Texans playoff game. What prompted that? You said you liked what you saw. Please expand on that.
I was home, and I didn't have nothing else to do. And there was a playoff game was going on, so I was like, all right, let me go check it out. And went there. We're out there just playing together. The excitement, everybody celebrating for each other. That hit me. So I was just thinking during this process. I was just thinking about that. Just being home and just seeing the excitement that they had, and that played a big part of it.
I remember the other thing too that we haven't really had a chance to see is, in a lot of ways, until recently, when when Tom Herman came to Houston and just started recruiting the city of Houston so well, and then now obviously with Houston in the Big 12, is just like how enticing it is for there's so many athletes from Houston, obviously, so many football players from Houston, that it is, I guess it's kind of a new thing that it's a huge draw for some guys, either as college athletes or as NFL players that we saw with, like, okay, Jerry Hughes was the first version of this, where Jerry Hughes just flat out wanted to come back and might not have even played if it hadn't been for his hometown team. And, with Danielle, I don't know, he could have gotten more money with a longer term deal elsewhere. So I can't say that it wasn't, there's a chance that he took less money to come to the Texans, but it was also just a 2-year deal. But yeah, I mean, he cited a lot about this being around family stuff and being back home, that it's hard to think that it didn't play a part.
Your high school coaches at Morton Ranch, they talked about how you continue to give back, giving the jerseys that the players have a lot of pride in.
Okay, so Aaron Wilson is asking about how he's continued to give back, giving jerseys to his high school. What does that mean to you getting started here?
Your connections to Morton Ranch, what does that mean to you, and kind of just getting started there and the follow-up?
It means a lot. I was at that school when it first started. Been in the first playoff game that they've had, and then they've just been continuing to climb ladders ever since. And it's very important to give back to where I came from. They helped me in order to be where I'm at today, and that's a big part of who I am. So it's always important to just go back and just give back to my team.
All right, I feel better that Morton Ranch had just gotten started when he was a young guy, because I can't keep up everybody. There's a good chance that I've never even heard of half the high schools of half of you who are watching right now. There's just so many damn. I'm an old timer. I got to Houston in 2002, and I already like when I go up to Cyprus, I bore the kids with stories about how there used to only be two high schools up there.
Your track back
There's like 783 now.
ground, high jump, 400 meters, all that stuff. How much does that influence what you're doing as your
So he's asked about his track background, high jump, 400 meters, all that stuff. How much does that influence what you're doing?
kind of like in the track blocks in that setting and now your 3-point stance, kicking back before that?
I mean, I'm Jamaican, so it's in my DNA to run track. So it plays a big part of it, you know, because playing on the D-line, you got to get out the blocks, get off, getting towards the quarterback. So it all translates over to playing football.
Now I'm going to do a dissertation on Jamaican DNA and get myself canceled from everywhere else ever. I wonder, did he grow up? Did he partly spend part of his time growing up in Jamaica? I don't know. If he does, he's done an incredible job with his accent.
Defense, but how much does it help to look on the other side of the ball when you have a quarterback, C.J. Stroud, and what do you see from him just in your days when you
So he said, I know you play defense, but how much does it help on the other side of the ball when you have a quarterback like C.J. Stroud?
You know, it means a lot, especially having a quarterback like him being able to be in the position that he is at such a young age. You know, that's very impressive. It brings the team closer together and it gives them something to play for.
Danielle, you mentioned Will Anderson earlier, but what are some of your thoughts joining the defense and also that Derek Stingley Jr.?
Okay. Let me see.
You know, some of the biggest things that I've noticed is
Okay, the question was, what do you think you can bring to this defense?
that being able to just go every play. You know, we'll have interior pressure this year, and I feel like that's a big thing. Just having me and Will on the edge and the interior pressure, that's going to be a massive increase from what I saw last year.
Danielle, you wore 99 with the Vikings. It's kind of a special number here. Do you anticipate wearing that or having to change your?
Massive increase from what he saw last year. We're going to take it. He took a shot. That's a shot. Shot straight at Jonathan Grenard. I'm going to put that back. I'm going to send that up to Minneapolis somehow. See if they get that. You wore 99 with the Vikings. It was a special number. How do you anticipate wearing that or having to change or what? Obviously, the implication being that J.J. Watt wore number 99 here.
Man, 99. You know, that's JJ's number. You know, he's done a lot with that number. You know, I'm not even gonna mess with it. So to be able to do what he's done with that number for the community and the Texans, you know, I'm just leaving that under him. So I've decided to possibly go with the number 55. So.
I don't. So 55. That was Jerry Hughes' number. So that's a little bit of symmetry there as well. He was 94 at both Morton Ranch and LSU. I wonder if maybe he actually wants 94, but he hasn't talked to Khalil Davis about it yet, so he doesn't want to, come in and Debo him out of it. But like he's in a tough negotiating position. He might have to say he wants 55 because so that way Khalil Davis can read the paper. He knows that this dude just got $49 million over 2 years. The Khalil Davis might drive a harder bargain than Danielle Hunter wants. But 55 on like a tall, sleek athlete like him, that's kind of badass too because it's got the OLB connotations to it.
Drafted by the Vikings, you've done so well there. Probably was the most impactful defensive player on the team last year. What were your emotions when?
Okay, so it says you were drafted by the Vikings and were probably their most defensively impactful player on the team last year. Did it hurt that they didn't bring you back?
Yes, they didn't bring you back.
I mean, I always felt like they were going to bring me back, but, business is business. And I just wanted to be very thankful for them giving me the opportunity to play in the NFL because there was a lot of teams out there that, didn't give me the opportunity, and they were one of the ones that wanted to. And I was very thankful for that, Went back, thought through all the years of just playing there and how much of I grew as a player and where I'm at today is because of them, and I'm thankful for that.
Next question. Cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. is another LSU grad. What have you seen from him?
As a former LSU player, kind of going back to Derek Stingley Jr., just being that part of the university known for being PBU, what have you seen from him in his growth from year 1 to year 2?
Could you repeat that question?
Derek Stingley Jr., another LSU grad, what have you seen from his growth from year 1 to year 2?
Oh, the speed of his game. He's going out there. He's moving faster than what I've seen. Making plays. That's what you do as a DBU, especially when you go to LSU. So, but yeah, he's playing faster, making plays. From what I've seen so far.
Like Derek Stingley, there's such a lore about him from LSU in that one season that he had his freshman year. I'm intrigued by. It doesn't matter once a guy's a free agent. You don't care necessarily where he went to school or not. But here's another big SEC guy on the team. I like some of the rivalries. I like it when I like that Nico went to Michigan and CJ Stroud went to Ohio State. I like these big time schools to be able to have some guff with. Now we got LSU guys, Alabama guys, all that. The Alabama guys outnumber everybody else right now, and they've got the backing of their coach, who he was asked about here. What have the conversations been like with DeMeco Ryans? And did you mention to him that you grew up watching him play?
Oh yeah, I sat with him earlier. We talked for about an hour. He was just talking to me about the game of football and how it's able to impact your family and everything around you, and being able to just go out there and then just doing things the right way and just playing together as a team. That's big time, especially when it just feeds off of each other. That kind of energy, it feeds off of your teammates. So that's one of the biggest things he talked about. Just playing together as a unit, playing together as a team. There's never a single individual out there just doing everything by himself. Everything works as a unit.
Okay, so the two things that he's talked about with DeMeco Ryans, a lot of it has to do with teamwork and atmosphere and all that stuff. Sean and I were wondering about this morning with the fact that the Texans went ahead and executed that Malik Collins trade. After the trade, straight up, Eric Armstead for Malik Collins fell through. The Texans go ahead and just send Malik Collins to the 49ers anyway. Two parts to that, which for a 7th round pick, it's one of those things where, okay, you could argue about whether or not he should be worth a lot more than a 7th round pick or whatever. The key thing is, all right, you still did need a defensive tackle. So you were trading to try to get Eric Armstead on your team. Now all of a sudden, Danielle Hunter's in sight, but then you just jettison Malik Collins completely. I think the two kind of more on the human side of things than on the actual football strategy side of things might have been as simple as the 49ers had a deal they'd agreed to with the Texans. You're in this moratorium where you can't actually execute it, but maybe the 49ers turned down other options or what have you. And then all of a sudden the Texans get this enticing bit of Danielle Hunter interest, and they got to go after they got to chase it. But you've kind of screwed over the 49ers if you've just pulled out of a deal that they were depending on. And just for the sake of being a good business person, regardless of any personal ties to the 49ers, you just don't want to become known as the team that bails out on trades. Like the Orioles, or a team like that's just got a bad reputation in baseball for botching trades. You don't want to be that team. So there's that. And then the other side of it too is Malik Collins. You didn't just trade Malik. You weren't trying to trade Malik Collins for a draft pick. You were trying to specifically say, I like Eric Armstead way more than Malik Collins. So get Malik Collins the hell out of here and bring me Eric Armstead. Oh, it turns out we can't do that anymore. We're still cool, right, Malik? It gets dicey. So maybe they should have waited. If that was part of the calculation, I think maybe they should have at least waited to see if they could get something different from Malik Collins. But I think it's probably more the not leaving San Francisco in the lurch. Regardless, we're going to ask Nick about this on Monday at 7:30 a.m. on Sports Radio 610. Oh, this is good to know. Texans are restructuring Shaq Mason's contract. Nick's in the kitchen cooking. What is the next move? Mason's been restructured. If that's true, that's the second time now. So this is what was it like getting to see your family go to Minnesota what's it like getting to see your family go to Minnesota to see you play?
Oh man, she was excited. I'm telling you, everybody was excited. My family, my coaches, they were all excited. Everybody that wasn't able to go to Minnesota to go to a game, they're finally able to come see me play and come see the Texans play.
Regardless of Bellevue, did you enjoy the environment? Did you interact
Did you interact with Texans players or coaching staff or anything like that after the playoff game? It's a long question.
I wasn't able to do that because I left early because of the traffic. So, yeah.
Ride ticket regularly, you didn't get a hookup or sideline passing up?
So my agency got me a ticket. So
His agency
we were
got
able
him a
to figure
ticket.
Something out.
That's how he got set up.
Got me a ticket, but I liked what I saw. I mean, good energy, and all that.
Leaving after the leaving before the game was over. It's tricky. You go into a game I remember the first year I was out of the NFL going to watch games in person. I used to get really PO'd when people would leave early if the Texans were down. But it is like, yeah, it's a whole different experience. You don't get to jump in a cold tub when you're hot after the game.
I don't know if you've thought about this and maybe you haven't, but this is the city you grew up in. So
This is going to be what impact do you hope to have here?
The biggest thing I feel like I need to do while I'm home is to be a bigger impact on my community. Give back to the kids. Showing that there's a way in order to get where you want to be in life. So I feel like that's the biggest thing that I'm going to be doing around here.
Last two guys. Danielle, do you remember when was the moment
This is a different podium experience than Will Anderson, which isn't bad, not bad, not good, not bad. It's just he's just different. He's just a very, very low key dude,
potentially coming back home was an actual reality?
laid back.
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Next question. I was getting wrapped up on this. I was trying to think of what my answer to Daniel would be on this, on Cooper DeJean. He'd been mocked to the Texans at 23 a good amount. We'll get to that in a second. There's just another one question here, too. I think we got to get to his nickname part. Yeah, real gym rat, coach's kid type.
honestly, I've been hearing.
For those of you who don't know, this is a joke about the fact that Cooper DeJean is a white kid. So all the cliche things, lunch pail, all that stuff about the first. He'd be the first white defensive back drafted in the first round since 1969. If he gets drafted in the first round,
A lot from people, like family and friends, like Texans, and it's just like you know how it is, the business. So free agency came, and just kind of figuring things out, me and my agent, and it would have been just better for just like me to be here with my family. Great football team, great organization, great quarterback, great front office staff. That played a big role in it. So.
all right. Last question. This is one where I give myself a pat on the back for having the right comparison for him. So there's a long list of stories in the past of nicknames that teammates and friends of yours have thrown at you. Does one stand out that you like the most?
Well, I've been called Vortex. I've been called Gumby. I've been called He-Man. But I feel like the biggest ones I like was from my first coach. He called me Gumby, Andre Patterson. So that was a cartoon before my time. So, yeah.
All right, thanks, Neil.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Let me get to this Cooper DeJean, but also for the kids out there, and we'll watch some Gumby. I want to check in on the on the old Sports Radio 610 guys too, and see exactly what they're talking about right this moment. Let's see. Let's see if I want to see if I can get in trouble with my employer by profiting off of watching Clint Sterner and Sean Bajani. It looks like is going to be here. Let's see what these guys are saying since they're at the top of the show about the. There we go. Give it to me, Clint.
Line position. Clearly, you heard it in Sean's voice. It's a big ass deal. The thought is well, you mess around. Tierre Tart still out there. Who was the other defensive lineman that was still out there? I think he was in Atlanta last year. The big kid, big guy. that I mentioned yesterday, older, 37 years old.
Calais
36.
Campbell.
Calais Campbell.
Calais
Couple of guys
Campbell,
still out there
yes.
that I think are still definitely would be starters here, but you still need more. And the thought was that 23rd overall pick that the Texans have in the first round of the draft would be something that you could use on an interior defensive lineman if somebody slid. You could use that, package it up with something else, maybe move up in the first round and get one of those defensive tackles that slid into the late teens. Well, when the Texans have traded their 23rd overall pick to the Minnesota Vikings. And here's how it went down. Minnesota Vikings, they get the number 23 overall pick this year and the number 232 pick this year.
7th rounder. That's the one the Texans got from Frisco for Collins.
The Texans get number 42, second rounder this year. Number 188. What round is that, Sean?
That's
You got
six.
that? 6th round. And then a second rounder in 2025, which I guess a caveat there is a lot of folks believe that Minnesota is going to be starting a rookie quarterback. They could struggle. So that second rounder in 2025 could be a late 30-something pick, which would be 35, 36, 38, somewhere in there, maybe, possibly. I don't believe it, but that could be the case. So the Texans trade away this year's number 23 overall pick. And so I think the next question is, what options are left? I mean, we talked about it yesterday. There's some luxuries that I think the Texans would like to have. There's some security blankets that
All right, what options are left? And there's there's the options in the draft that are left, which, like, when you go from 23 to right now, like the consensus pick at 23, a lot of them for the Texans had been Johnny Newton. Yeah, like on mock draft database base, that was the most popular pick. Cooper DeJean, who Daniel had just asked about, he was going to the Texans a fair amount. Like right now, he's taken in the 25th pick overall on average. So the defensive backs like Kool-Aid McKinstry, guys who would have been available between 23 and 42, and they might still be available. It's if the Texans trade back up there, just amongst defensive tackles and cornerbacks. You got the Ennis Rakestraw kid from Missouri. You've got TJ Tampa. You've got the Mike, the name that I always mess up, out of Michigan, Sainristril, and like multiple dudes before you get down to 42. But then at defensive tackle especially, and then I think at wide receiver. The wide receiver right now, if you look at the top 42 picks and who's going to fall probably below 42, there's going to be at least a few intriguing names left at wide receiver by the time they get down to 42. If you go out in free agency right now, I think you got to be focused more on really the commoditized positions, where safety and cornerback right this moment, there's just a boatload of guys out there. Like Steven Nelson's gone out and he's sought more, or he sought more than maybe whatever the Texans offered him. We knew that he was disgruntled last fall when he ended up tweeting out a picture of a vest and saying you can't trust somebody who wears something like this every day. He's talking about Nick Caserio, and yet the Texans retained him, and I'm glad they did, even though I thought at the time they might have maybe had to cut him for insubordination. He played well, and especially when Derek Stingley's playing as well as he has. But right now, there are like 15 dudes out there that are either at Steven Nelson or a little bit below or a little bit above his category of play that you can probably get for pretty reasonable. And it might end up being Steven Nelson. So I don't feel overly desperate about that. And I think if the Texans sit with their 2 second-round picks right now, they'll be all right. I don't think they're overly worried about. I don't think they need to be overly desperate to get back up. Nick does like thinking about the draft with like bands of players, and whenever he trades, he's always said that he likes to trade to where they feel like there's going to be a pretty healthy group of players that they'd want to take. So like maybe there's one guy they really like, when the Texans traded back for and ended up drafting Kenyon Green, my guess is that they liked both Kyle Hamilton and the defensive tackle from Georgia and Kenyon Green. And Kenyon Green was the one who was left. And that's the explanation for the strategy. I don't think it played out all that well based on the results from the last 2 years so far, but that's the thinking and like the strategy in action. When they trade up for guys in the past, he's said that they're trading up to that spot, not necessarily because they want to get one specific guy, or maybe they do, but because they like, if they trade up to 23 theoretically, while everybody else is still at 20, it's not that they know for sure they're going to get a guy. It's that they like the 2 or 3 guys that are there. So I say all that to say, I think that Nick probably feels that right around 42 in the draft right now, there's going to be a few guys that they really like. And it's that kind of draft. There's going to certainly be a wide receiver that they like. There's a really good chance that there's a defensive tackle that they like. There's a pretty good chance. So really, like almost 100% chance there'll be a wide receiver they like at 42. I think there's a really good chance there's a defensive tackle that they like. There's a reasonably fair chance that there's a cornerback they like. So if I'm looking at the draft that way, it seems to me that cornerback would be where they'd go after a guy in free agency still, especially because there's quantity there right now. Let's see. Nate Wiggins. The name I always mess up. You're going to need to be. All right, Jamie. That's a little too on the nose. All right. I don't need your insults to be quite so on the nose when I'm having a nice Friday afternoon. Should the Texans draft for need or best player available? That is a good question. Now, the Baltimore Ravens are maybe the only team in the NFL that genuinely drafts best player available consistently. Like the famous example was that when they drafted Ogden, they already had 2 good offensive tackles. But they're like, well, no, this guy's a Hall of Fame caliber potential player. We're going to draft him. And they generally do that. And they also, they value football play on the field more so than a lot of the measurables. They do a lot of stuff that's just flat out old common sense correct, and they do a really good job of it. With most teams, it ends up being like, we're going to draft the best player available, but our board is already adjusted based on what we need. So if you're a team that desperately needs a defensive tackle, you kind of you stick to your board. So you're taking the best player available, but you've kind of already built it in that you really need this player. So I think on the Texans board, they might have, maneuvered a few guys around after this Malik Collins / Eric Armstead issue to where maybe they move some of the defensive tackles up a little bit. And that's how they get away with saying it's best player available. It's best player available according to their board, but it does that makes it a lot easier on draft day when they start, they are following a strategy where they take best player available, but it's best player available based on a list of guys that's been adjusted by what they need. So I think they should. I'm frozen. No, I'm frozen. I know when I go like this too much, when I gesticulate, stuff happens on the StreamYard. I get thumbs up and everything. I used to be able to get balloons if I gave the peace symbol, but that's not doing it anymore. I don't know. And a few people have sent this in. Thank you. Danielle Hunter was born in Jamaica in 1994, moved to the U.S. in 2002 when he was 8. I wonder if he can bust out. He must be able to bust out the Jamaican accent pretty well then, right? And then talk in, what's that style? Like, what's the Jamaican slang that when people talk, it's almost like it's impossible to understand. We need to get him to do some stuff in Jamaican slang. I was going to watch the Joe Mixon stuff, but I'm actually kind of enjoying. You guys, would this be too hackish for me to just watch Clint Sterner and Sean Bashani and comment off of them or destroy things that they're saying if I don't like them? Let it go frozen. Yeah. Is that what it is? That sounds right. Patois. We had a lot of talk about, okay, I think the Texans are going after Higgins. Now that's going to turn me into a liar about what I think the Texans should and shouldn't do in terms of going after veteran players. That would 100% free you up to take best player available. Again, I'm just thinking about the way Nick operates. And if he looks at this wide receivers class and thinks that, man, there's a lot of value out there, I think the GM in him, kind of the cold calculating computer in him, is going to think no, I've got to balance out this whole roster. And I got a good shot of getting a young, cheap wide receiver. And I like the quarterback that I have to help develop that young wide receiver. I'd rather do that there and then some of the positions in the, some of the positions of need on the team right now, we can fill in on free agency. And it has worked out that way, that there's very few defensive tackles that I feel really good about out there in free agency right now. Clint had mentioned what's his name? Livestream's going on too long. Calais Campbell and DJ Reader. Oh, DJ Reader got picked up, so DJ's not there anymore. Brandon Ayuk, trade up and get Marvin Harrison. I don't think that's happening, man. That'd be a whole lot. That'd be a whole lot. All right, Principal. One person said he's cool with watching these guys. Let's watch these guys for a little bit longer. Or you guys just tune in on the YouTube channel. After I leave, I'm going to watch these guys for a little bit. If you promise that after I leave, you'll tune into the Sports Radio 610 YouTube channel.
I think the Texans would like to build some depth at positions, create some competition to see who can start at some positions. And then there's just flat ass needs. Like you can't go into the NFL season as a team that won 10 ball games last year, went to the second round of the playoffs, and the expectations are you to take that next step with no, impact, big boy, game-changing,
proven
defensive tackles. The number 23 overall pick is gone. The pick of the litter in terms of free agency, veteran free agency, appears to be gone. And
he froze up on me.
Now, hey, we're going to make a trade. We're going to have to make a trade. Or I heard, I can't remember who, somebody I was watching this morning on TV talking about, the June cuts. I guess the first wave of cuts that come in the NFL. And I guess you can, you got lucky with the Mixon deal, really. It kind of fell in your lap, I think, with the Texans.
Yeah,
so
lucky.
maybe.
Yeah, that's okay. This is that's an interesting. I'm glad he touched on that. So you've got the June 1st cuts, which these days it doesn't really happen after June 1st anymore, because teams used to have to wait until after June 1st. And if they cut a guy after June 1st, it would split the salaries up. Nowadays, you can designate a guy a June 1st cut without doing it any time of the year or any time of the offseason. So I don't think that's as much of a factor. I do think that Nick is way more comfortable than probably most of us are in waiting it out and waiting for an opportunity to present itself. Because like as it was with Joe Mixon, or anything that happens between now and August, and how various teams, especially they get their rookies in, or after the draft, they might draft the cornerback that they feel really good about, and then all of a sudden somebody becomes available via trade. I think that's very much in play. I like the idea of getting to the draft without having any real drastic and dire needs that you can think of. And like right now, okay, there's the team that I want to actually become Super Bowl worthy. But then there's also the team right below that where you can't have any glaring holes. And the glaringest hole right now is simply that you do not have a starting cornerback. And there's guys out there. There's Steven Nelson, Xavier Howard, multiple guys out there that are capable. I'd like to get one more guy in as a safety, but it's not an absolute slam dunk essential. If they want to go out and bring back Sean Gibson, who's played in San Francisco and also been here in Houston, somebody like that, that'd be cool. But like, you absolutely have to get a starting caliber corner in here at some point. So I think that's the one thing I'd like to address before the draft. When it comes to wide receiver, defensive tackle, which like for that Super Bowl contender, I want an Eric Armstead or somebody like that in here. It's obviously not going to be Eric Armstead, but you can get by with the guys you have right now. They're functional. They can hold up versus the run. They can provide some push in the pass rush. They're not high impact guys. So I still want that, but I don't go into the draft feeling like, oh my God, I absolutely have to get that or all is lost. I'm probably, back up like second wide receiver. I don't want to say that's a luxury or anything, or excuse me, second tight end. And that's another spot that may end up being a surprise second round pick or something. So I'm not quite. I don't feel like it's quite as urgent as I think what Clint's presenting here. But
maybe
I do
that
like,
could happen with a defensive tackle. See,
I gotta start. Clint does like I gesticulate a lot, but Clint like does powerful like It's much more manly. You got to be more like Clint.
Seems like that's an iffy way to live at such an important position.
Lucky, but then the Texans turn right around after you swing that deal with Mixon and you extend him. you give him a 3-year deal. You didn't have to do that. So I do wonder where Mixon was in the grand scheme of things after you strike out on Barkley, because in no way, shape, or form, correct me if I'm wrong, but did I read or hear that the Texans were ever in conversation or had interest in anybody else like a Josh Jacobs or an Aaron Jones or a Swift, in any one of those guys? I think the only guy that we heard that the Texans might have mutual interest in is retaining Devin Singletary.
I think, and I might have missed at the beginning where I'm sure he said that they were interested in Saquon Barkley. There was a link to DeAndre Swift. You know, you never know how concrete those things are. Like expressing interest in DeAndre Swift is different than going after him.
And we know what happened there. So lucky, I don't know. That's subjective. We'll see. Here's how it stands right now as far as the Houston Texans go going into this draft after this trade this morning with the Minnesota Vikings. They've got 9 picks coming up inside of the next month when the draft starts, April 25th, I believe. 9 picks. So you got 2 in the second round, 1 in the third, 2 in the fourth, 1 in the sixth, and you have 3 7th-round picks still. You also get that extra second rounder in 2025. Is this a deal in which the Texans are going to compile draft picks to maybe trade back up a little bit higher in the first round and go?
That's where, okay. That's the other part of it too, is I said immediately when this happened that it's 50-50 that the Texans still draft in the first round. I think that Nick, if somebody presents him something that's interesting, and, you know, in the Vikings, I don't know if we've heard yet. Let me know in the comments if we've heard yet whether the Vikings initiated this or the Texans did. You don't usually get clarity on this stuff, but the Vikings might very well be making a play to try to get up to draft the quarterback. You know, to get into the top 3, that would obviously require, I'm guessing the Patriots just decide not to go after quarterback this year or something. I feel like everybody's like imprinting what Belichick might have done versus what a normal NFL team would do and trying to figure out exactly what they are. But anyway, maybe they try to trade up to get JJ McCarthy or somebody. So if they presented this to Nick and Nick thought, all right, for one, I don't have to carve out as much money if we do end up staying here. I don't have to carve out as much money with my for my first round draft pick in the salary cap. So that frees me up to spend a little bit on a free agent right now, potentially. And then maybe along the way, though, they get presented with a nice opportunity to move up within the first. I'm guessing that would end up coming probably the day before or the day of the draft. Like this might very well be a scenario where we're all sitting around watching the first round of the draft, and like by the 29th or 30th pick, we're starting to get blue balls over whether or not Nick's going to pull this thing off, and then he does it. It's because you get that extra 5th-year option too with a player there. So I'm open to anything right now.
Get that interior defensive lineman? Are they going to still address that on the open market? Are they going to do something with a wide receiver a little bit higher up? I mean, at least it gives them flexibility. I don't think even Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans knows what they're particularly going to do in the draft right now. It'd be impossible. I mean, your first pick right now is in the second round. So it's just creating flexibility at this point in time while still having money and a lot of it to make necessary additions on both the defense and offensive side.
Right. Well,
I feel dirty now that I'm using these guys and like theoretically potentially taking away listeners from them. So I can't do it any longer. I can't do it. It was very good. I like listening to both those guys, and obviously Sean is in for show today. Sean Bajani's in for show, and Sean's very good at looking up the nitty gritty stuff and the details. I'm gonna call it an afternoon there. I'll probably do the response to the Joe Mixon presser a little bit later. No, you know what? I've got to do this about Joe Mixon because it was almost like heart-wrenching the way that Joe Mixon actually, like, you're going to see Joe Mixon was not expecting to get traded.
Well, CJ.
So, and his isn't as long as isn't as long as Danielle Hunter's was. They had a lot of questions for Danielle Hunter. Okay, so the first couple questions. The first one is, Joe, when you think about how you fit in this offense, and what Bobby Slowick does. Do you think you're about this style of play in this offense? I don't know. It's something about how do you fit in this offense.
When you think about how you fit into this offense and what Bobby Slowick does, how do you feel about what your style play is for this offense?
Yeah, I feel honestly, I feel great being in this here situation. Got a great group of guys around me. Talk to the coaches, and just where they see me playing in this here offense is definitely exciting times, man. So I just can't wait to get going.
This isn't the heart-wrenching part. I want to get to the heart-wrenching part.
Do great things, but like I said, for me, it's more so just attacking the off season, and my number being called, deliver. I mean, I was fortunate enough, bro, to have a lot of group of men around me that they were all
It was a little
special.
earlier
what I'm
than
saying?
this.
What's allowed you to be that effective at dual threat weapon? How are you gonna be able to bring that to Houston?
Yeah, man. I've had a hell of a run in Cincinnati.
Okay, so this is the second question. Then there's one before this. Just bear with me, everybody. It's heart-wrenching.
Them fans, they embraced me the way that they did, and
Okay, so the question is, what was the first 24 hours like when the reports came out that the Bengals had signed Zach Moss, then all of a sudden a trade? Does that give you any motivational fuel to say, well, I want to show the Bengals what they're missing out on?
Then all of a sudden a trade, and does that give you any motivational fuel to say, hey, well, I'm not only happy to be here, but I want to show the Bengals what they're missing out on?
Okay, so he found out about the Zach Moss deal, finds out he's getting traded. Is he motivated, or does he have a chip on his shoulder about all that?
I mean, for me, like I said, it was definitely shocking. I took that 24 to 48 hours to hurt. It took a while, and I'm still, having, emotional feelings about it. But that's a place, where I could forever feel like that's home for me. And, like I said, I'm just very grateful that, them fans, they embraced me the way that they did. And I just love everything about the way that them fans were. We bought the city of Cincinnati. We got it lit back again. And, I plan on bringing that same thing here. These fans, I'm sure, they got a taste of it last year. But I feel like with what we got in the making, man, I think that it's going to be a great thing. And, like I said, man, I'm just excited to be here, feel wanted, and, I just can't wait to make the most of my opportunity when my number is called.
So like that part of it, man, I hadn't realized that he was kind of blindsided by the trade, and it was just really nice. One of our listeners made the point this morning. I think it was Michael Beckman. He said it was nice to hear Joe Mixon talk about how much he loved the team and being in Cincinnati. Elsewhere in the press conference, he talked about being a captain for the last 3 years, that it was really important to him. Because okay, now if he ends up feeling that way about Houston, he's capable of feeling that way about his team. Like a lot of guys get to the NFL and they're just more they're the stereotype. Like guys are in it for themselves or in it for the money or what have you. So it's really cool. The more guys you can stack up that genuinely care about the team type of stuff. Like Mark Ingram. I always remember Mark Ingram. I know he wasn't here long. He wasn't able to do much. He was at the tail end of his career, but that dude's energy was so much about everybody else. Like he would spend all his energy propping up other dudes. And that kind of stuff, that people feed off of that. So I think Joe Mixon just genuinely caring about being a good teammate, being a leader. He talked about being vocal in here. I like all that. Look, he had that ugly incident when he was a teenager. And I think reading up more on that than I had in a while, obviously he's done a lot to overcome whatever stigma he had from that. Since he's been in the NFL, but he spent time having a conversation with the young woman without their attorneys present, and they reconciled. This was after the civil suit and everything else, And, I don't think like she had any motive to say the nice things that she did about the way they'd been able to have a discussion about this. So I think he's a kid that's grown in a lot of ways, and it hasn't been an issue on the football team whatsoever. There's an incident this summer that went to court. He was found not guilty, and like there's not a lot more written about that. But I think a lot of the things that people would have worried about just hasn't been an issue so far. And I think he's going to be a good influence for the younger guys on the football side of things. Next question. This is, what are the Houston Texans getting in Joe Mixon? I think this is where he ends up. Oh no. This is, throughout your career, what has allowed you to be effective, and how will you bring that to this team?
Yeah, man. I've had a hell of a run in Cincinnati. I think that, the way that I train in the off season plays a major part in that. With the opportunities that I got, I pretty much tried to make the most of it. I thought that, with my running back coach, Jay Hill, I thought Justin Hill, by the way, he did a hell of a job with making sure, he was motivated each and every day. I think that, that's what changed our whole perspective of, the way we attack the day. And, I just can't say nothing but great things about him because, I think that in terms of really taking that turn and leap of being a pro, I think that he definitely helped me become that pro that I am today, man. So, shout out to my guy Jay Hill, and, I obviously wish him the best in his career and what he's going to do, because I think that he'll do great things. But, like I said, for me, it's more so, just attacking the offseason and, my number being called, deliver. I mean, I was fortunate enough, bro, to have a lot of group of men around me that they were all special. You know what I'm saying? We had Chase out there. We had T. We had TB. We had a few really good tight ends, my years being there. And, we had Joe Burrow. So, I had a hell of a supporting cast around me, man. And I think that what we got here is, the same type of firepower, bro. So I definitely look forward to, like I said, being a big part of this. And I'm very excited, man, to come out here with my new teammates, bro, and, really, get after it for real. So definitely look forward to it.
Okay, so that part of it, I like that he brought up that he's just lucky to be around a group of great men. Something Will Anderson talks a lot about, try to put yourself amongst great men and to try to take after them and emulate them and everything. And then also just obviously understanding what the understanding like yourself, how to be a great man. Did you see what Titus Howard tweeted? I want to just pull this up real quick. All right. He had, let me see this. Is that sharing? Damn it. Share it. There we go. All right. So Stephon Diggs said, ready for whatever. Titus Howard did the little eyeballs emoji. Then Titus Howard, you said, I'm just messing with you. I want to click on this photo edits that didn't go as planned, but it's never as good as you expect. And then you go, and then you watch, you scroll through 400 of them. This one, at least, it looks like they would show the picture that they show. I don't like the ones where they're like, hey, look at, you'll never expect what you saw from this Hollywood actor, and then they never even address that actor. So they can all go die. Titus Howard, don't mess with us, man. You know who did this was a freaking Dawkins up in Buffalo, where he had that tweet about how he was going to miss Buffalo and everything. And then it turned out that he actually was just extending his contract. God, I got too much stuff on here. I don't know how to stop doing all this. Okay. So that looks like it was nothing. Next one from our new friend Joe Mixon was what are the Houston Texans getting in Joe Mixon? Or is that the one? What are the
Yeah,
Texans
man.
getting in Joe Mixon?
One is a leader. I mean, I've been a captain the last 3 years in Cincinnati. You know, when I speak, I lead and, you know, speak with command. Guys, you know, they listen and they feed off of me. And, you know, I'm going to just continue to still be the same person that I've been since I walked in out there when I was 20 years old, man. And always been a leader, lead by example, and I do be a vocal leader as well. I think that they're definitely getting a playmaker, and I think that the way things was being explained in the meetings that they're willing to showcase everything that I could do, which is very exciting. I've been waiting for this a long time, and you know, I just can't wait to make the most of every opportunity that I can, man, because I just know the type of player that I am and the guys that's around here and the supporting cast around. I think that I definitely could take this thing to the next level. And, you know, with the quarterback we got in CJ, man, I mean, that, like I said, he's phenomenal, and I know for a fact he's going to make that next jump. And that's in terms of them playoff wins. But obviously, we take them one game at a time. Got to build the camaraderie around the team, and I feel like with me coming in here, and I'm sure they already got that as well, but, you know, I'm here to make sure we all gel together at a high level. We all competing, and we're going to do that each and every day, whether it's on the field, off the field. I think that, you know, like I said, what we got in the making here is going to – everybody, I think Houston got nothing but, you know, great things coming their way, and, you know, to be proud with everything that we're building here.
So it's like a few you pointed out earlier, like he sounded depressed at the beginning. I think that's 100%. I think that's 100% fair from a couple questions back. If you're just joining us, Joe Mixon was blindsided by this trade, the trade for him. I don't know if he was blindsided by Nick's trade today. Maybe he was. Maybe he came in here like, what kind of insanity is this? Thought we were going to get a first round pick. No, but he loved being in Cincinnati. As multiple numbers of you have pointed out, like he was there for both sides of Cincinnati too. They were losing. They went one for one of those seasons. They went two for whatever they were. It was bad. And then all of a sudden, remember they splurged on defensive players in free agency, and the next year they drafted Joe Burrow. And then all of a sudden, within a couple of years, they're in the Super Bowl. So like he's been a part of all of that. He's been a solid citizen on the team when times were tough. And I think that's maybe where Bill Lazor, who's the special offensive assistant now, he's been here for his second year now. He was the offensive coordinator Mixon's first 2 years in the league. So Lazor would have been able to see Mixon when times weren't so good and when there was a lot of scrutiny on Mixon and the pressure was very high given his issues, given his issue in college. So I think probably the vote of confidence from Bill Lazor might have helped a lot in this. And he was just like he'd built himself a home in Cleveland or Cincinnati, and like a home in terms of feeling awesome being around those guys. And all of a sudden he was yoinked out of it. Like I told Sean this morning, it was like a fish like enjoying his time swimming around in the waters of Cincinnati. And then all of a sudden he went to go grab a Gatorade out of the machine, and he got yoinked out into the sky and like plopped down in Houston like a damn fish in a boat. And like for him to adjust and like have a conversation with D'Amico, which is this next part is important. You mentioned D'Amico having played in the league before. Why is that enticing for players? I think this is the part that the Texans have so much good advertising in terms of what kind of a coach D'Amico is that I think it's very easy for players like Joe Mixon or Danielle Hunter or anybody else, you know, going back last year to Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz got excited about D'Amico Ryans before the Texans had even drafted a quarterback. And they were rumored at one point to not be drafting a quarterback at all. So this was about him and what he knows about D'Amico Ryans.
You mentioned D'Amico having played in the league before. I'm curious, why is that enticing for players who maybe want to look for a destination? And what do you feel like the biggest benefits were in having played for a coach who had played in the league? Zach Taylor also played in the league as well.
Well, with D'Amico, man, if you just see him on the sidelines, bro, like you could tell, like he want to be out there. Like he running around, he jumping, he doing all the things that the player do. You know, they all turned up, getting after it, and I think that with what D'Amico brings, he's bringing that player that he was, and all he doing is transition it into coaching. And I think that he does a great job with leading his defense for number one, making sure they match his intensity. And I truly feel like he's the one who has that train going, and obviously it correlates to the players. And I think that, Houston have a hell of a defense. I mean, they got a lot of young guys, just getting after it. They fly into the football, causing turnovers and things like that. And I think that, like I said, what we got on offense, we're gonna do the same thing in terms of, scoring a lot of touchdowns, making a lot of splash plays. And I feel like as we playing complementary football, I think would be a damn team to be reckoned with, man. So I definitely look forward to this 2024 season, man, and I'm just very excited.
Let's see. Two more questions here. Most fans are wondering which number you want to wear here.
Yeah, man. I thought about changing it, but I think I'm gonna stick to the 2-8. Just go ahead and stick to the traditional number of running backs, and 2-8 is gonna be where it is. And I promise you, like I said, you expect a lot from that number this year. I promise you that.
First, he's going to have to talk to cornerback Troy Pride. I guess he's on the Texans. So take it up with Troy Pride first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last question. You played with two of the best young receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Tank Dell, Nico Collins, did you see them last season and what they can bring to this offense moving forward? You did see them at least once when the Texans played the Bengals.
Yeah, man. Even Noah Brown, too. I think that he's a hell of a
And a Noah Brown reference. Noah Brown went off for like 160 yards in that game.
Player as well. I mean, I think he ran it up for 200 on us in Cincinnati, man, and it was
200.
like, damn, like I said, I'm kind of familiar with the players that we have here, not too much, but Tank Dell, he's a hell of a young guy. I think he's a rookie, and I think that his sky is the limit, man. I mean, he could do whatever, in space, taking the top off the defense. And, I think Noah Brown did the same thing. And Collins, he's a very good possession, and he'll go get it down deep too, man. So I definitely feel like, with what we have here, we got the right thing stirring and cooking, and we just got to make sure we bringing everybody, along the way to, being on the road to greatness. But, in terms of, with the offense, I think that we just got to do whatever we can, man, to take care of the football, make plays, and obviously come with that intensity each and every week. And I think that we'll be happy with the results that we get.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
So one thing about Joe Mixon, somebody had asked me, I can't remember if it was on this stream or just on Twitter or what have you, is what does Mixon bring to the table more so than Singletary? I think for one, simple durability in the sense that Joe Mixon is built like a feature back. Like Joe Mixon can handle 200 plus carries per season, no problem whatsoever. Last year was Devin Singletary's first year that he got over 200 carries in a season. So I think just from body type, there's that. And then there's a certain level of physicality with Joe Mixon. I think when it comes to the one cut and go and getting 3 yards no matter what, like he's a little bit more of that mentality. And I'm not saying this is in any way to try to tear down Singletary or anything, because I think Singletary over the second half of the season, when he really started to click and figure it out, I thought he was very, very good. But I do think it's just a cut above in a lot of respects with Joe Mixon over Devin Singletary. And I think a little bit more of a fit for this system, which, like, let's be really, really clear about it. The run game has to improve, not just at the running back position. The offensive line needs to be much more in tune with how to run this system. And it takes a while. Like it takes, I think it was John Crumpler, the medical student who writes for USA Today for the Texans. No big deal. He's kind of busy. But I think he was one that brought up a point or the stats of various times with Kyle Shanahan, how the run game had improved from year 1 to year 2. Like, it takes time, it takes reps. When we used to have combined practices with the Broncos, I used to love it because as a defensive lineman, I had a lot of respect for that scheme. It was just, it's a pain in the ass. Like, they were so good at making the run and the pass look exactly the same. And you would be playing your ass off versus the run. Then all of a sudden you realize it's bootleg and everybody's way out. Like, so I had a lot of respect for that scheme. I played against Terrell Davis. Like, that was my first introduction to the playoffs was playing against Terrell Davis. It sucked. But I loved watching. I would sit over and kind of like sit by the side and watch Alex Gibbs Sr. coach that offensive line, and I kind of picked up a few of the little tricks of the trade that they do with it. And it like, there's just so much more technique involved in a zone running system than just like, hey, run to the side and know what your keys are. You've got to be perfect with it. And that's hard to do. And they had an offensive line coach this year who's new to the system too. So I think between the coach and the players, that part of it's going to get better. And then Joe Mixon, having been in a scheme like this, a lot of the same concepts and terminology and everything, he can be a big part of getting the O-line better too. Because there's communication between them. You know, like when Arian Foster was running this and he was just so good with the cutback, he could kind of, it was like Arian had the defense on a string, you know, and he could just he could figure out and feel almost when he could cut back across the grain and they'd pulled the string on everybody else. The defense like a yo-yo flying off in the other direction. That's what you're hoping for. And like, so Joe Mixon has that ability to help that out. And then like CJ Stroud getting better in the run game too. Remember, one thing that John Harris and I were talking about this, I think when Case came in versus the Titans and started, there were some times there in the red zone where I think Case, because of his experience, was better at identifying and recognizing exactly what, when, how, and where to check in the run game. And I think that made a difference. That's something that like that's a classic thing where CJ knows exactly where he needs to get better in that. It's just your rookie year, you're going through so many things and they want to be sure that you're focused on the things you should be focused on, that they're not going to ask him to be in charge of pass protection and all of the run checks and everything like that. Whereas Case has just seen it all and he can handle a lot of that. So I think that's another big part of it. The quarterback's involvement in the run game and identifying some of the stuff pre-snap is going to make them better too. I have like the utmost faith and confidence in CJ that he's going to take care of that. As far as Dameon Pierce goes, Dameon Pierce, as a lot of you guys know, and you've heard me talk about it, probably to an annoying degree, like Dameon Pierce has had an incredible attitude about this. And when he went out with Clint Sterner and Sean Pendergast in the post game, it was the game that he got the touchdown return as a kickoff returner for the first Browns game, right? Yeah, he talked about how it's been brutal for him learning this system, that he's never been in a system where there was so much put on the running back to read safeties, to understand blocking schemes, to know when to cut it back. He's always very much been more like, even, you know, like some of the college zone systems, like when they're running zone scheme, it's not to the same degree or complexity as teams that really major in it, you know, and that's high school, college, and the NFL. The teams that do it really well, there's a lot of detail to it. And Damien was just never quite in a system like that. I think that he's going to work his butt off at getting better at it. I think the Texans, though, I don't think they can turn down a trade if somebody were to come to them during the draft and say, hey, can you give us this and a Dameon Pierce because he fits our scheme a lot better. I feel like at that point you got to say, if it's a good trade value, it's a good trade value. Like, we can't wait on whether or not Dameon Pierce figures it out this year, which sucks because he's an all-time awesome guy. And I think he still very much has it in him to be the guy that he was his rookie year. I think one thing that he might need to do or think about doing is go back to his playing weight from his rookie year. Because I know he wanted to be sleeker and svelter and be, you know, more of a threat in the passing game. But one thing he didn't see this year was him really breaking tackles and punishing people physically the way he did 2 years ago, even on his good runs. And I think some of that might just be as simple as body weight. But I love that kid, man. I really hope he makes it. Cowboys are releasing Gallup. Anybody interested? That's the scariest thing, man. That's the scariest thing about some of these signings. Adding Christian McCaffrey helps Shanahan quite a bit also. Yeah, the McCaffrey, you know what? There's still a part of me that feels like, yeah, like look, the Panthers paid the lion's share of that contract. The 49ers gave up a bunch to get McCaffrey. I've just completely turned, man. I just cannot get overly excited about any running back anymore. And I think that's why I was in the extreme minority, I think, of people that weren't all that interested in bringing in Saquon Barkley, because I love his highlights. I love just how talented he is. But at the end of the day, I feel like there are just so many other backs who will give me consistent and steady yardage. Like Barkley is still very much a boomer bust player, and he's gotten better at it over time. He hasn't been quite as Goldilocks about like only wanting things to be perfect before I rush for 40 yards. But there's something that it goes against the grain of what I fear in a running back and what I respect in a running back. Like if you want to go and beat good teams in the playoffs, like if you got to go win 4 games in a row in the playoffs, I need a running back that can grind out yardage even when circumstances are crappy. I don't need a guy that just like is awesome in this game and then disappears in the next. So like there's lesser running backs that can do that more so than Saquon Barkley. He's just like, he doesn't break a lot of tackles. Break tackles. The blocking's not good. Fine. Break tackles. Damn it. Running back is volatile, how much they put out year to year. Yeah. And that's where I think where the distinction between a genuinely great back and everybody else that's below them, that's where Saquon Barkley doesn't meet the cut for me. Because like Adrian Peterson had what's his name as a quarterback? It's 2 days in a row. I can't remember his name. They had no wide receivers. Like Adrian Peterson kept people employed that year that he led the league in rushing while rushing with a sports hernia. And like I look at that, or I look at Derrick Henry and how consistent he's been. Even this last year, we had the worst offensive line in the league. He's still second in the league in rushing. Like those second in the league in rushing. Like those are the guys that I respect. The rest of them, man, like I feel like a grumpy old man. You guys get hurt too much. You're not available for as many carries. Like it's just there's not that same blue collar feel to running backs that there was just with a Frank Gore. Like I'm not talking about I'm not talking about long ago or anything. Derrick Henry is a modern guy like that. They're fewer and further in between now. I don't know what purple Jesus means. Oh, Adrian Peterson. Yeah. Worried about. Is there an Ayuk trade or no? There's no trades. I know some people are coming on here. Sarah, I see you've made a few comments, and I don't remember I haven't seen you in a while, Sarah. But you had a question earlier that I was intrigued by, but I can't find it here. All right. Now I'm going to call it a day. It's hard when there's 255 of you here. I feel bad, like I'm leaving you out in the lurch. I feel like I thought I was going to trade Eric Armstead, but now the Texans have bailed on me. I will. I'm gonna figure out what I can do with listening in on other Sports Radio 610 shows. Maybe I'll do it in the evening after Sports Radio 610 is off the air, because I don't feel right about competing. I don't feel right about competing with my actual employer while actually showing pictures of my employer up there. But Clint and Sean made some good points, so I encourage you, go watch or listen to Clint and Sean right now. Thanks everybody. Have a great. Like, subscribe. My name is Seth Payne. I played for the Texans long ago. If you've been watching this for an hour and 43 minutes and you didn't know that, then I am incredibly flattered. And if you've been watching for an hour and 43 minutes and you did know that, I'm incredibly flattered. So thank you. And everybody have a great weekend.